2025 has been a fascinating year in film, and I considered putting together my own personal top 10, but that's just my personal preference. So I thought it would be more interesting to gather together some friends and display our consensus top 10 films of the year. So let's get right to it. And so what we did is we each put together our own personal top 10s, and then we had like a scoring system. And then we put all those up together, added them all up, and so now we have a consensus top 10 of what we thought were the best 10 films of 2025. And I thought it was kind of neat. There was quite a bit of overlap, but there was also there's quite a few films that only one of us would have selected. So I thought that was a really neat collection. But I want to jump right into it. So we're going to do the top 10, starting at 10, moving down. And around the midway point, we're also going to share some of our own personal favorite aspects of the 2025 film, and then we'll finish off the top 5. But before we get to that point, let's start with our top 10. And so I'm going to have number 10, Cameron, share with us what we have as the number 10 film of 2025.
Our number 10 film of the year, Train Dreams. This is Cliff Bentley's Pacific Northwest logger movie with lead actor Joel Edgerton playing a character named Robert Grenier. And he contemplates life, love, and loss in this rapidly changing landscape of the early 20th century. Train Dreams shows us the joy and the tragedy of true love, the importance of unlikely friendships, and affirms that innate longing we have for a world with no more pain and tears. So it kind of fits perfectly into this conversation that is something that we all share collectively, which is our faith, and a lot of your audience, David, of films that people are looking for that touch on these themes. This film, for many, scratched that slow cinema itch. It's got a surprisingly stacked cast, including Felicity Jones, William H. Macy, and Will Patton as the narrator. In a lot of ways, it's the most confusing film of the year, and I'll tell you why I think that. It's not because of the plot, kind of a simple plot, not because of the pace, pretty slow, but because I'm surprised that Netflix would be willing to invest the resources in a project like this. It's a contemplative film that causes you to think, causes you to question a lot of things about the world, about life, and really just makes you feel kind of home and at peace, despite the things going on in the film, which are sometimes troubling and emotional. If anything, Train Dreams was my number 2 film of the year, which is probably why it made this list in general. But it gave me hope that more films like this would be made in our rapidly changing film landscape, especially as we head into 2026. It's an overall beautiful looking film. It's got a great score by Bryce Dressner and powerful performances. I can't recommend Train Dreams enough.
Yeah, Train Dreams was one of those ones, maybe one of my most anticipated, and didn't make my top 10. I found it to be unbelievably beautiful and hypnotic, but for something about it didn't click with me, which is why it didn't make my top 10. What do you other guys think about that?
Yeah, man, I watched it. I kind of wished I got a chance to revisit it, but it just I put it on like late afternoon one day. I think it was like raining outside, and I was like, this feels like the time to do Train Dreams. And it was just hypnotic in a lot of ways, so good. The ending punched me in the gut. Yeah, I think Cameron, your point about Netflix is interesting. I'm curious to kind of how y'all feel about, I think Netflix purchased it out of Sundance. And so it's kind of one of those things where it's I'd rather it be on Netflix than not distributed anywhere. But it's a curious thing to where Netflix has, the power to buy stuff and put it out. But then it's does it just kind of something like this special get kind of lost, after this year, depending on its awards and stuff. And I'm like, man, I really wish I could have seen this in theaters, especially of anyone this year that I didn't. This is the one I wish I could have seen on the big screen.
Yeah, I loved it. I saw, Cameron, maybe it was your review. I saw somebody's Letterboxd review that said this movie feels like a prayer in movie form. And I just found that right on the nose. And I remember Keel and I were texting about it this week, and Keel basically said that right after the movie finished, she just kind of sat and stared at the TV for 30 minutes. And that really hits the nail on the head. But I think this is an exceptional film. It is so beautiful. It captures grief wonderfully, and the kind of reflection of grief, looking back Obviously, all the dreams. I thought it was wonderful. Could not recommend it highly enough. It comes in right at number 10 on my personal list of the year.
Awesome. Go ahead, Cameron. You have something else to say?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I don't think we can pass over the screen without mentioning Joel Edgerton in this lead role. Um, kind of someone who for me I really only knew from uh, Baz Luhrmann's Great Gatsby growing up, and a film or a book that we all probably read for school, had to read for school, and then once we finished it, we are able to watch that movie in our classrooms. At least that was my experience with it. And then he kind of jumped back on my radar. He was in Master Gardener by Paul Schrader. And regardless of what you think about him, Schrader as a director, I mean, Edgerton is just great on screen and he shows so much emotion on his face. And it's one of those roles that I watched this year where I'm like, I don't know if anyone else could play this role. I'm just glad that Edgerton played it. And yeah, I hope to see more from him in the future and similar type of roles like this one.
David, I have a surprise that I wanted to do as well. And I don't know if Cameron and Keel ended up doing it too, but I wanted to pick one or two double features to do with each of these.
All right.
So if it's okay, I'm just going to read two for Train Dreams. The first two that came to mind were After Sun by Charlotte Wells, and then the other one was The Tree of Life by Terrence Malick. Both two very contemplative, full of grief, full of joy, holding sorrow and joy together. But those are my double feature choices, David.
After Sun's an interesting one. I think Terrence Malick is an obvious. He was all over that film, I think. Let's move into number 9.
So for number 9, I believe we're doing Eddington, which every time I mentioned to someone that I was talking about this movie, they asked, "Oh, Paddington 2?" And I was like, "No, Eddington." So I thought for a second I was going to come in here and do a Paddington in Peru review and just get y'all on your toes, but instead we're gonna go back to 2020, which is a very fun time. So I mean, Eddington, yeah, Ari Aster's new movie, kind of like I feel like somehow like underappreciated. Was pretty high on my personal list. I think like number 5 or 6. And just is one of those that has stuck with me. I mean, we kind of drop right into Eddington in the opening credits with like a genuinely startling title card that says like May 2020, and it's like, oh God, like we're going for it. And I mean, we kind of just like drop in this town of Eddington where we are kind of there just in time to see these tensions, like political, social, racial, marital, all kind of bubble to the surface, it seems like, and eventually snap and snap in very drastic ways. I mean, we follow Eddington Sheriff Joe Cross, played by Joaquin Phoenix, and Mayor Ted Garcia, played by Pedro Pascal, and they're kind of the two main clashing points in the focal conflict. Disagreeing on mask policies and all these things that like really trigger some feelings if you kind of sit back and think of how it was in 2020. And eventually, Joaquin Phoenix's character, the sheriff announces he's gonna run against Mayor Garcia, and with pretty much an exact opposite campaign sign, which I think is one of the funniest jokes of the movie, is on his truck he says "you're being manipulated," but he misspells "your" and just says "your." And I just think that is just hilarious. And I just think like this conflict in the middle stands in for all the other ways that we see in the movie, that isolation, desperation, especially in that pandemic time, really took over people's minds, and the way people kind of gravitated to belong to something that was not very healthy and ended up being detrimental. And I think the log line of the movie, mentioned something about neighbor being pitted against neighbor. And I think that that's just very, very sharp, maybe sharper than it intends to be. And I just think I'm curious to hear y'all's thoughts on this movie, almost more than any others that I'm talking about. I just think like Asher's in a class of his own. Like, I mean, I don't know if he's the best doing it necessarily, but there's certainly nobody that's doing it like he is or in his way. And I just think his movies, especially Eddington, they kind of slip through your fingers a little bit. Like you're kind of trying to grab sand, like you can't really get your arms around it. Like I feel like anything I would say about this movie is like, this is what happens, but it's not what it's about, and it's not what it feels like. And he's just so good at provoking. He's so good at putting dread on the screen, for better and for worse. He's funny and smart. I think, we'll talk about our favorite moments later of 2025, but the firework needle drop is just an all-timer in this movie. I mean, I laughed out loud when Katy Perry's Firework starts playing. in the middle of a very odd and awkward fight. So yeah, I'm curious to hear how y'all thought about this. What y'all thought about this one? I mean, I was not expecting it to turn into First Blood at the end. I mean, there's just like all these left and right turns that like you can't predict. And for me, this is just like I liked it. I kept thinking about it. I returned it. I liked it even more, and I still kind of can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah, I'm with you. This is probably my favorite Ari Aster film yet.
Wow.
And I really I agree with the First Blood is a great comparison because the whole movie's building this tension, and it does a great job of what the insanity that we all were feeling during that time. So I think that was a great synopsis.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
put
I mean,
Joaquin Phoenix and Pedro Pascal
yeah,
as the two leads, and I'm in. So good
yeah.
by them.
I mean, he Joaquin is just like he's so interesting to me because I really do think he's like gone through the blender of like he was the best doing it, and then everyone was kind of like, I don't know,
Hmm.
like, and he got really weird. And then it's just every time he's on screen, I'm just like, he's just one of the best. Like, whatever you think about him as a person, he's just so like, I mean, he's really like chameleonic in the ways that like he is his character, and like it's hard. Like I know my wife, for example, like doesn't like him as a person because she thinks that he is his characters, and I'm like, okay, he's not like the Joker, but it's like he's so believable in all these. It's like I think you believe every word he says, and like you believe everything he does, and like he's just so good. And I think we kind of like take it for granted in a weird way because it's like, oh yeah, Joaquin, he's great, but it's like no, like he is doing something different.
Yeah, this was the last of the movies on our top 10 list, our consensus top 10 that I was able to see. I watched it early this week. And the thing that stuck with me like the whole time is just that flashback to 5 years ago and that reminder of being in a town and mask mandates and vaccine discourse and just the tension that was just like in the world at that time. And I feel like it does, um, this may be my own reading on it, but I feel like it kind of addresses and covers that kind of neutral absurdity of that time.
Hmm.
Where it's
I think
it
that's what
may
some
have,
people didn't like about it was because it took that neutral perspective.
yeah.
Everybody gets offended. Yeah, like
Yeah.
nobody is safe.
Yeah, it felt like it felt like it captured that well. To me, that this one's just off my top 10 at 12, my personal top 10, and it was really close. But there are just some parts of this movie I just don't think work. I mean, I think having Emma Stone and Austin Butler in this and what they do with those two storylines is just was a complete waste of money. I don't know how much they got. That they got two of the best,
Yeah.
the probably the best actress in Hollywood right now, especially for kind of these dramatic roles. And then, one of Hollywood's biggest up and comers in Austin Butler. And I just feel like it was a waste of talent. And y'all may disagree with that. That's just how it kind of felt for me. But other than that, I mean, luckily for me, those two don't really take up that much of the movie,
Hmm.
which is part of the reason why I kind of feel like they
Yeah.
wasted that. But so it doesn't really take away from the experience all that much, which is why it's like just outside. But I'll definitely be wanting to revisit this every few years just that reminder of that
I
time
never
period.
want to revisit it again.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like both and yeah. And like it's crazy that I feel similar probably about Emma Stone where it's like I can't believe she kind of showed up just to be like Joaquin's wallpaper, if anything
Mhm.
else, like on
Mm.
his phone, like or whatever. But I don't know. Like I really I did was curious about the Austin Butler's thing, and like I agree. It didn't stick. Maybe I don't really know exactly what he wanted to do, but I think at the least, like what a lot of our movies that we're talking about do is like they're kind of crying for something, and I think this movie is like
Mm.
crying for peace. And I I don't think Aster knows how you know much he put his finger on the pulse, but ultimately, like at the end of it, like the dread we feel with this movie is that like okay, like peace is impossible.
Mm.
And the good news that that we have is like I can leave a movie like that and be like, okay, like it's impossible like from our hands, like just by us. And I just think in a backwards way, it kind of like exposes our futility and all these things. And I don't know how much Aster like knows he's doing that,
Mm.
but I just think like it leaves me with a lot, a lot to think about and like the dread in a weird way. the weird way that heaven works is like that dread and hopelessness can kind of turn
Mhm.
into turn into hope in something different. Um, but yeah, it's a mess. I mean, this movie's a mess, like in a lot of ways. So I totally understand. And like, yeah, it's one of those kind of what I was saying at the beginning, like whether or not everything works, like I'm just glad this dude is like swinging for the fences
Mhm.
and putting people like Emma Stone and Austin Butler and like nothing rolls. Uh, Even if it like is frustrating, like I'm just glad someone's doing that, you know?
I agree. All right, Cameron, we're gonna jump back to you for number 8. What you got?
Yeah, number 8, we're going to talk about Wake Up Dead Man, the newest Knives Out film. So this is Ryan Johnson's third installment of the Knives Out mystery series. If that's what we want to call it. And it takes us to a small town parish in the American Northeast. It follows our beloved detective Benoit Blanc, played by Daniel Craig with that lovely accent, an ex-boxer turned priest, Friar Judd, played by Josh O'Connor, one of probably Hollywood's brightest new stars, in my opinion. Wake Up Dead Man is a classic murder mystery story, only this time the mystery presents itself as a miracle and challenges the faith of its characters who are searching, struggling, and suffering, all under the authority of their idealistic and intense priest, Monsignor Wicks, played by Josh Brolin. With the Knives Out mystery, we are accustomed to an outstanding cast, and this one's no different, including roles played by Jeremy Renner, Glenn Close, one of my favorites, Thomas Hayden Church, Andrew Scott, Kerry Washington, and Kaylee Spaney. A murder mystery set to the backdrop of this current cultural climate. Nothing new there with Ryan Johnson's Knives Out movies. But this climate is surrounding religious institutions and their relationship to those seeking political power. This film acts as a mirror to modern Christianity in a lot of ways in our polarized world, showing both our beauty and our blemishes, which is what I loved about it. While many today are choosing the way of Monsignor Wicks, it's Friar Judd who, in perfect imperfection, is how I described it, shows us what it means to love your neighbor as yourself. And I feel like that is really what drew me to the movie. And what's ironic about that is, in a lot of ways, that's what pushed people away from this movie. So I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think especially as Christian guys, this is the might be the most interesting one to discuss from that perspective. Tell me if you guys agree with me. Like from a technician, I think Ryan Johnson is top tier as film director, and this is one of my top 10 films of the year. But my question for you guys is, I feel like when he's writing his writings, there's always a little bit of contempt he has for maybe his audience or the viewers. Do you guys feel any of that in this film?
I, I think, you know, us like in a different way from Ari Aster, like he does like to poke, you know, like all the Knives Out movies kind of poke at something. Um, but this was the one that kind of took me by surprise because he does poke and pry, and I was like, okay, he's just gonna poke and pry at the church now instead of, you know, corporate greed or this or that, what he did in the prior ones. But then I think it was really interesting and refreshing to kind of leave and be like, oh, like I don't really know if I need to defend the church now. Like I just was kind of like, okay, like I don't, you know, I didn't feel that defensiveness kind of rise up in me. So it's interesting to think about contempt. Maybe we're kind of in the minority of the viewers of that movie on how we feel about the church. So maybe that's a little bit different than how the masses might have felt about it.
Yeah, I found myself Uh, yeah, I think your question's poignant. I think out of each of the three in the trilogy, this one seemed to be, yeah, the most condescending to the audience in a way. I think he over-explained himself often with the plot. And I think I found myself, the biggest con of this movie is I found myself not really caring about the whodunit very much. I found myself really just wanting to watch the two leads yell at each other and have little moments of, forgiveness and, the crazy Brolin confessions and all that, trying to poke at Josh O'Connor. I really just cared about them. And I found myself in terms of the whodunit and the mystery, yeah, feeling like it felt like a secondary aspect, and I think each of the three in the trilogy increasingly got so. Like I revisited Knives Out pretty quickly after seeing this one and found the mystery part of it much more exciting and poignant and important to the movie. Whereas this one, I don't know, I was like, okay, somebody died. I don't really care as much about the how. I really care much more about the characters and their development. So it felt a little over-explanatory at points, but still found it very insightful.
Number 7 of 2025, we have 28 Years Later. So at the beginning of 28 Years Later, this is the third film in the 28 days, 28 weeks, 28 years later franchise. And to me, this is by far the strongest portion of the three films. And when it begins, it feels like it's going to be just another kind of exciting zombie movie, because it starts with a dad taking his son out on a zombie hunt, almost like an initiation or a coming of age tradition. And once they establish kind of the world they're in and these people and who they are, it really unearths something much more. And the film really becomes a story about a boy who, he learns that his father is imperfect. It almost lunges him into the idea that he's losing his mother. His mother is ill. And the entire thing is him trying to save his mother. And the story really becomes a story of mortality and morality. And and I also like that it takes punches at, today's culture. There's a character that comes in briefly and we start realizing, how easy 9-to-5 jobs are and how social media works and his lack of understanding of that. And then, of course, there's a character that comes in the final third that absolutely changes this movie on its head. And it really is a film that it became extremely emotional to me, and I think it has a much deeper meaning than the exciting zombie action that's at its foundation. And I just loved it. What do you guys think of 28 Years Later?
Yeah, for me, you go ahead, Keel.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead, Cameron.
Yeah, for me, this, I feel like in a lot of ways we've had a resurgence in how good movie marketing is recently. I think Longlegs is one to look back on, and how scary that movie we thought that movie was going to be based on the marketing. And for this movie, that the trailer and that Rudyard Kipling poem being read as it's growing in intensity, and showing clips from this movie, and just because this movie does have a lot of softer and sweeter moments, but there is a lot of intense action and running and being chased, and
lots of nude zombies chasing characters.
Definitely. And
the alpha.
Yeah. And so that poem just that just makes the hairs on my arms stand up. And I couldn't have this movie brought up and not bring up that poem. But I just think there's just so much about this, and just, in a lot of ways it's not really anything new. I think we've had action movies and, whatever, towing the line of action, thriller, and horror that are like this movie and pace and plot in a lot of ways. But I just think it did it really well again. And I'm always going to want to watch something like this. And I mean, I'm not going to spoil the last 5 minutes, but I can tell you this because I'm really looking forward to the second installment, which I think hits theaters real soon. The characters that come in the last 5 minutes just puts the biggest smile on your face, and is just like the best full circle moment for this movie. It
almost felt like a different movie for the last 5 minutes. Like, it really shifted gears.
Yeah. I just
There's a lot of
it. It worked
parts
for
like
me.
I mean, yeah, it worked for me. I wish I had time to revisit it again. I only saw it kind of when it came out. But yeah, it does feel like on paper, if you put all the parts of this movie like next to each other, you kind of got to be like this. There's no way like that these things kind of fit together and flow well. But it just does. And I think, yeah, I mean, the trailer is like the trailer of the year for me. Like, just, I remember that came out and being so amped. And then it's just I mean, this is like soft spoiler, but like pretty much the surprise that like Aaron Taylor Johnson's not the main character is just like so shocking. And you're just like, wait, what? And I mean, I think it's the opening, sequence in the bedroom and stuff with, the kids, and just like, it's just so upsetting, and you just don't know where it's going. And then, yeah, to find that heart in the middle of it that doesn't feel like forced in, but very natural, and actually kind of feels like the main thing that's moving the movie along, and all the really like sick like zombie stuff, like at the end of the day, like that
Mhm.
also is awesome. Like that kind of feels more peripheral to like what actually is happening. And I just think it's great. I mean, the chase down you know, down the jetty or whatever, the bridge is just like
Mhm.
one of the sickest things I've seen this
And
year.
and all shot on an iPhone, by the way, which I cannot
It
understand.
was surprisingly one of the maybe 2 to 3 films that I cried in this year, and it was the most unexpected tears I think of the year coming out of the zombie sequences. But I just wanted to shout a couple double features here, and I missed the last few movies, so I'll just kind of skip to 28 years later. I think a hilarious double feature would be the Grand Budapest Hotel, just to see the Ray Fiennes absolutely cooking in two different, completely different, but also semi-similar
Hmm.
ways
Yeah.
with him as the Bone Temple King in 28 Years Later, and then as the King Lobby Boy in the Grand Budapest. I think would be a hilarious double feature. So
Well, I
loved
want
it. Yeah, I think
I
it's
want
number
I want to
9 on my list.
I want to hear your double features. What did you have for Eddington? What were your
So
double
for
features?
Eddington, I have two. I think the kind of obvious on the nose one would be Civil War by Alex Garland that came out pretty
Yeah.
recently. I think that'd be a fun
Hmm.
political one. And then the other one is this kind of lesser seen movie that Keel introduced me to called Miracle Mile by Steve DeJarnett. Came
Oh
out.
yeah.
It's a TV movie.
Yeah, dude,
Yep.
it rocked my world. Just watched it recently a couple
A
months
great
ago. I
shout.
think it would just be a really funny,
That's
yeah,
a
kind of
that's
talking.
available on Netflix or Prime. It's accessible somewhere because it's one of those films that used to never be accessible. It's accessible somewhere. I can't recall exactly where.
Yep, cannot recommend it high enough.
If
And
you
and
want just like a absolute miserable night, you could just start your night off with Contagion and then just stroll right into Eddington and just have the full COVID
there you go.
experience.
Yes, that's right.
And then what do you have for your double features for Wake Up Dead Man?
So Wake Up Dead Man, I have two interesting ones. First is going to be The Banshees of Inisherin by Martin McDonagh, just to kind of see the another two male lead characters going head to head. This one is for a much more depressing reason in Banshees. But then the next one is going to be Spotlight by Tom McCarthy, the
Oh
2015
man,
Best Picture winner. I think that would just be really interesting to see the priest situation
that's
in a very
fair.
cynical way,
Yeah.
and then seeing the more redemptive version in Wake
Yeah.
Up Dead Man with Josh O'Connor.
All right, well,
I'd also
Sam.
shout First Reformed there if you want to
Mm.
do the
Oh
full
man,
priest
so just be
and just
depressed for a week and a half,
yeah,
all over.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Why
Uh,
not? You know?
I'll brighten it up with the Conclave double feature.
Yeah.
Oh,
Now
that's a good
that
shout.
that'll be
Yeah.
interesting. How
That'd
about
be good.
How's
Conclave?
that?
28 years later would be an
Yeah,
interesting.
That would
that's
Triple.
also
not
be
a bad
interesting.
combo either.
Yeah, the full bill.
All right, Sam, let's stick with you. Let's jump to number 6. What do we have?
Number 6 is Begonia by Yorgos Lanthimos. So this is an English remake of the 2003 South Korean film Save the Green Planet by Jang Hoon Hwan. Jang was actually planning to direct this Begonia, but he had some health concerns, and so Lanthimos replaced him, and Jang is actually the executive producer. So this is the fourth collaboration between Lanthimos and Emma Stone, where she plays a powerful CEO of a pharmaceutical conglomerate, Oxalith. And her name is Michelle Fuller. So she is stalked by these two young men, played by Jesse Plemons and Aidan Delbus. And Plemons is this kind of conspiracy all in his bag. I mean, Plemons is cooking in this movie, but he's in this conspiracy bag, and he is convinced that she is a part of a violent alien species. So he's convinced that Michelle Fuller, Emma Stone's character, is an alien and is part of the Andromedons, who are set out to kill all of the bees, and force humanity into servitude. And so they kidnap her. I thought this was hilarious. They cover her body in cream so that she can't communicate to her fellow aliens. And then they torture her. They really brutalize her to try to force out of her whether or not she is an alien. And without spoiling too much, this film has one of the bleakest endings of any film of this year. I won't spoil it, and I'll limit much more of my own discussion here. But I think it was an incredibly poignant movie. I really had I had medium expectations as Lanthimos has just been pouring films out for the last 3 years. And I didn't even get to see Kinds of Kindness, but the last few films he's come out with are just fascinating and bizarre. And I thought this was just going to be another entrance into that. But I found it much more exciting and entertaining. And I think he had a lot of good ideas in this with all the honeybees, and some of those sequences were unbelievable. And then obviously the Greek comedian Stavros shows up as the cop, and I thought he was a hilarious showing up in the movie. And I actually looked up the word begonia was an ancient folk practice in the Mediterranean region based on the belief that bees were spontaneously generated from a cow's carcass. So I thought that was just a very interesting ancient practice that is obviously renamed into this movie. But yeah, I thought it was an excellent film. Highly recommend it. I will limit any other spoilers for my own.
Mhm.
This is a great movie to go in blind and just let Lanthimos just do his weird, crazy bag. But yeah, great film.
Yeah, for me, Lanthimos is the director that I would probably describe as he's the director that makes me the most angry, because I see so much talent, but I kind of hate a lot of his final products. But I can't refute that there aren't works of art. I just don't enjoy them. This one I did. I thought, and again, I think large part of that is it was an original property that he, added a lot of his Lanthimos techniques to. But man, it is a fun film. It is dark. It's pretty creepy. And the fact Stavros, like, as funny as he is, he's one of the darkest characters in the film. So yeah, this one surprised me how much I like this film.
I agree. I'm honestly not a big Lanthimos guy. Like I really like some of his, I really love The Lobster, really love The Favorite,
Mhm.
and then the other ones like I really don't like Dogtooth. Really
Yeah.
don't like
Yeah,
all the
I
other
think
ones. So
this is probably the closest comparison to Dogtooth too, as much as I agree with you.
Mm.
yeah, and I just yeah, I went in. This is another one where I was like, I don't know what's gonna happen, and it kind of hooked me, which is like, you know, it's rare now that a movie kind of like really gets its teeth into you and like can kind of pull you one way or another. And like, yeah, again, like at the end, I was just like, wow, like I really didn't know what was gonna happen, and like it's kind of a is she isn't she kind of thing, and it's just like I didn't know the answer for a long time, like it
Mm.
really had
It
me.
kept having me sway. Well, she is an alien. Oh
Yes,
no,
Mhm.
she
yep,
isn't,
yep,
and then she
back and
is.
forth. Yep,
It really did a great job of doing that.
Mhm.
totally
Yeah,
agree.
this one's tough for me. I'm not a huge fan. I'm still a novice in Lanthimos, so I won't speak from with a wide uh, as if I've seen a lot of his films. But to me, it's one of those movies where I have to ask myself, did it accomplish what it set out to do? And the answer is probably yes. So if that's the litmus test, then it passed. But for me, it just other than the fact that it was a very intense middle section, kind of leading up to the ultimate climax of the movie. There you can't help but sit on the edge of your seat and kind of lean forward, and you can't take your eyes off the screen. And there's some brutal moments in there that are just kind of etched into your brain, for the rest of time, especially in the middle section of this movie. But I thought the performances were great. I mean, Clemens and Emma Stone are absolutely some of our best
Yeah, they're
actors.
heavyweights,
Yep.
man.
They're heavyweights. I thought the support roles were just great, and in a movie that doesn't really have that many characters.
Yep.
I thought everyone was batting 100, batting 1,000 from the plate. So, um, but yeah, I obviously Lanthimos is a director who uh, his movies have an underlying social commentary to them, and it's pretty obvious even from just the trailer that this one has a social commentary to it. And I had to sit there at the end of the theater and ask, what is he actually trying to say about this? I couldn't tell you. I know how he set it up. I know maybe what his intentional aim was for, but I just don't understand what that ending really delivers. At least for me, that's just how it left me. I also, this may come as a surprise, I found it incredibly predictable.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
but that could have just been
Yeah.
me, and maybe I've come from a different, intellectual level than the
That
rest
may
of the
be
people.
your lack of Lanthimos films.
That might be it.
That may, because I think that having a little bit of understanding of his previous work, I think that's one of the things that threw me off.
Mm. Yeah, and just another like kind of like what I was saying at the very top of our discussion. This is just a great film by a great director who is committed to his bit. And like I remember Keel and I were talking afterwards, and I was like, yeah, maybe that makes sense that he did that, but like he's just gonna be in his bag and do his
Hmm.
thing. And I was in for it. Two double feature options here. I think the first one is the obvious, is the original Korean release of it, Save the Green Planet. I actually haven't gotten the chance to see it yet. I couldn't find it anywhere on streaming, but it's probably available to rent somewhere, the original from 2003. And then the other one is just another great conspiracy movie, because I guess this is a conspiracy movie in some sense. It's just the classic Blowout by Brian De Palma, just to watch an obsessed guy go all in on a conspiracy. So those
Yeah.
would be
Hey,
two
man,
really fun double
Blowout's a
features.
great thought there. That's really
Driving people to like
Yeah,
insanity,
yeah, that's
but
right.
also like
who is sweatier, John Travolta or Jesse Plemons?
That's a good question.
That's the
yeah.
question.
All right, all right, we're up to our top 5, fellas. But before we get to that, I do want us to take a moment and I want us to kind of share something that you really appreciate about this year in film. I know I have something, but I want to start. Cameron, what do you have?
It's a great question. I think this year the thing that stood out the most, I feel like the trend that stood out the most is we got so many great films that had, huge cast and lots of talent in each of those casts. We're going to talk about a few, so I'll just talk about maybe some of the ones we've already talked about. I mean, between Wake Up Dead Man, I mean, we've kind of come accustomed to that with a Knives Out cast of people really wanting to work on those projects, and kind of each one kind of capitalizing on who's really kind of big at the time. I mean, this one it's Kaylee Spaney and Andrew Scott, and Josh O'Connor. But even I mean Eddington, starring kind of one of Hollywood's most seasoned actors, and then probably one of Hollywood's most beloved actors in Pedro Pascal, and then Emma Stone and Austin Butler being thrown in the mix, and then the same with Train Dreams, a movie that wasn't really on our radar, and then you kind of see Felicity Jones, who obviously a lot of people know from Star Wars Rogue One, but even The Brutalist last year. And then yeah, Will Patton is a favorite of mine. I mean, we'd all know him from Remember the Titans. He's also the grown up sheriff and the new Halloween, the original installment of the new Halloweens. So I just thought there were just great casts, and there's a few more movies on this list that we're going to talk about, especially 5, 4, 3 in a very different way, but 2 and 1. I mean,
Mhm.
all most of our top 5 includes
Yeah.
just outstanding ensembles of actors, and there's just nothing better to me than going to a movie and seeing 8, 9 actors that are just at the top of their game, all working together and just doing something really, really special. Because there are a lot of movies where they've had casts like this and it just did not work. And I felt
Mhm.
like it worked. I felt like it worked more than it did in this year.
So your big thing is seeing these ensembles coming together, and you love that this year. That's awesome. Keel, what do you got, man? What's something you took away this year?
Um, yeah, I mean to Cameron's point, I think too, one thing I wrote down is the cast of Warfare was another one in my mind
Yeah.
that was
It's
like
a great one.
just
That one, I don't want to spoil anything, but I don't know how much we're going to talk about that one. I'm glad you mentioned Warfare.
yeah, I mean a great one, and I think like it was just like taking all the internet boyfriends and putting them through hell. It's like a very interesting like act of casting. Um, I think so. The two other things I wrote down, I have one thing that you know made me really excited, and one thing that made me really mad. And the the thing that made me really excited that are just sticks out is Tremel Tillman in Mission Impossible. I just think is like I mean I'm a seen Severance and love his character in Severance and stuff, and just like when he shows up in Mission Impossible on the submarine, which is a movie, I mean a movie that is just so all over the place, and like I mean a
Yeah,
very
the movie stops right then when he shows up, dude. It's funny.
yep, yeah, you are out of your mind, like in his voice, and just like it's just he kind of steals it, and like to steal a movie from Tom Cruise is like just it's just his movie for a little bit there. I just think like he's
Man, great
special.
pick. Man, that's a great call.
I'm
Good call.
hoping that he gets. And then something that really made me mad was the very upsetting home makeover and sentimental value. I just like I don't know if you've all seen that
Yo,
movie,
I'm
but
with
at the
you,
end of
dude.
that,
Yeah.
just like when the home, I don't know if that's like provoking, as in like this is supposed to make you mad, or if they think it's a good one. Like I really don't know. And it just made me mad. Just
That's
like
a great
just
man. Those are two great call outs. Very nice.
yeah. So those are the two things, like favorite and least favorite moment, maybe.
Sam, did anything stick out to you in 2025, 2025?
I don't know what's been said because I'm in a thunderstorm and my
That's okay.
laptop bugged out. My apologies.
No,
I
you're
have three
good. They
things.
didn't say anything of value anyway, so you're good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So three things. One is pretty obvious, and I was expecting to love it, but it was the Johnny Greenwood score and One Battle After Another, which I'm sure we're going to talk about. I think it's so propulsive and exciting, thrilling. So I love that. Number two was Michael Cera finally being added to a Wes Anderson movie. I saw one
Yes.
Letterboxd review that was basically like Michael Cera was formed in the Wes Anderson factory at birth, and so how has he not been in a Wes Anderson movie yet? I thought he was incredible. And then the last one is the honey sequence in Marty Supreme, one of the most out of control
Yeah.
5 to 10 minute sequences I've ever seen in a movie. Took me completely out of it, and I'm not sure I've laughed that hard in a movie in a long time.
And it's
So
really sad. You're laughing, and it's
100%.
unbelievably sad. Yeah, that is a really. It'll be interesting if in a few years if we're still thinking about that.
That's
And
for
it
sure.
lingers for like 4
Yes.
seconds, and you're
Yep.
just like, all right, I'm ready to get out of this. And it just goes straight. I mean, I'll save a little bit, but it just goes straight into, you
Yeah.
know, K-Stone going to the apartment, and it's just like
Yeah.
such a good little
It's
the
crazy.
honey and the honey pot. It's
Safdies,
just
man.
And my thing this year is in when I did my voting for the North Carolina Film Critics Association, I was trying to push for this too. You mentioned score. My favorite score of the year was from a smaller film. It was an animated feature from Angel Studios called The King of Kings, and it's a film about the life of Jesus but from a kid's perspective. So everything's a little bit abnormal, a little not quite right. And the score is like this lullaby that drives the whole film, but it doesn't like put you to sleep. It like lulls you into the consciousness of a kid. And I absolutely love it. And it's one that I just have been listening to all year since a lot of times when I'm writing, I have it on and I get like emotional as I'm listening to it. So that was one of my favorite things of the year was the score from The King of Kings. But let's not waste any more time. Let's jump to our top 5 films of 2025, and we're going to start with Sam. What do we have at number 5?
So number 5 is Zach Kreger's response to Barbarian, the movie Weapons, which I brought my 4K
Weapons, baby.
Blu-ray in. Just came in the mail this week. Have not gotten to see it on the 4K yet, but this was a film I had insanely high expectations for. One of the great trailers of the year. I think behind 28 Years Later, it's right up there. Incredible child performances in this movie all across the board, but especially by the lead. It's led by Josh Brolin, Julia Garner, Alden Ehrenreich, and so on. Basically, the movie's set in chapters, and even if you've seen the trailer, you know what happens with the very creepy girl voiceover, right? On a Wednesday night 2 years ago, 17 children from a third grade classroom in the town of Maybrook, Pennsylvania, ran out of their homes at 2:17 a.m. and disappeared. Only one student, Alex Lilly, remained. It's an incredible film. I think some of the best parts of it to me are the leads. Josh Brolin, which again, by the way, just these filmmakers that are full auteurs getting absolute heavyweights to come do these crazy performances. He's this Josh Brolin's this angry father who his son is one of the 17 that run away. And he kind of he seems like a construction worker, a builder. And so he goes in and looks at all of the Ring cameras and tries to map out how to find these kids. And without spoiling too much, he leads us to the house of Amy Madigan, who plays Gladys, which is one of the crazy performances of the year for me. I had a friend who dressed up as Gladys for Halloween, and I just thought that was hilarious. And she's this witch type character, and I won't spoil too much there, but basically, we discover her, and the movie takes some crazy turns, leads us into some crazy witchcraft, and we kind of get some insight into how all of this works. But man, just an incredible performance all around. Barbarian, Kreger's first feature, was one of my favorite movies of 2022, and I had insanely high expectations coming into this one, and it turned out incredible. I think I have it at number 4 on my personal list of the year. Could not recommend it high enough.
Yeah, this may have been the film that gave me the most visceral response because it had two of the best jump scares I've had in years. And then there's a sequence where I am laughing and horrified, and that takes place. This film was, and then I showed it to my son, my 17-year-old son, because I was like, I just wanted to see somebody else experience what I just experienced. It is a really fun film.
Yeah, it's immediately like along with Barbarian and stuff like canonized kind of in like I want like
Yep.
top of the list to show people who haven't seen it movies. Of
Yep.
just like if you haven't seen it, let's do it. Like let's go sit in, we'll pop in the disc and like I'm gonna watch you watch this. You know, it's
Hmm.
like immediately one of those. And I came in like honestly like pretty scared. Like I love horror movies, and then like whenever I sit down to watch them, I'm kind of like, why am I doing this again? And the trailer definitely led it on to be like much more like horrific than it is. And so the second time, I think I enjoyed it more, just kind of like letting it ride, kind of knowing the twists and turns, and like, yeah, we don't want to spoil it, but honestly, like this, you could know what happens, and like it wouldn't take
Hmm.
away from your
Yeah,
experience once you
I
kind of
agree.
realize you're. And it's just like Kreger is just he's just fun hands to be in, like oh, for a movie, just like
And
letting him.
and is James the best character of 2025? James is pretty
Yeah. And
fantastic.
so I
So
just love
good.
like everybody in this movie has like very like realistic reactions to what's going on. You know, it's not like a horror. Sometimes, you know, you get a little, you know, out of the sense of realism, but everyone's just like, what's going on? And then like when something happens, they get upset, they get angry. I think of Josh Brolin like waking up from his dream
Hmm.
and just like yelling that he got scared. You know, like all
Yeah.
those things. Like it's just it's such a fun movie to watch and to be inside of.
Yeah, I think I say this, and this is, I say it's tongue in cheek because um, it's kind of a big statement, especially in this movie year, and especially with at least at least two, maybe three more movies we're going to talk about on this list. But I think that the first three quarters of this movie are probably the best of the year.
Yeah, there's a
I
little lull there for a moment after
Hmm.
that. You're right.
I think the moment that what frustrates me about weapons is I think what all that anticipation builds up into just didn't deliver for me, and it may be a preference in particular that's on
I
the
think that's
Sam
fair.
mentioned. Sam mentioned, that there's some witchcraft involved, and I just think from a horror perspective, thriller, whatever you want to call this, like it just doesn't. It's not a very compelling. Um, it's not very frightening. I kind of mixed feelings about the ending, and because I laughed and I almost felt weird for laughing.
Mhm.
But I won't spoil that because it is a great kind of a great moment, regardless of what you end up thinking about it at the
Mhm.
end of it. But yeah,
It's kind
that
of one
first,
of like I agree. I mean, it's kind of one of Kreger's like it's not his kryptonite because I think his movies are great, but like I didn't for everything Barbarian was like I thought the ending was a little goofy. Like this ending is like thrilling, but it doesn't like scratch the itch you want an ending to
It's
scratch
almost
for what it's
cartoonish.
setting up. Yeah, and like it's great in what it is, but like it's not what it is doesn't feel like what it should be. And I think like it is he's so good at, you know, backing himself into a corner in the suspense, and it's like, you know, I would love to see like I don't know what the alternative is, but like if he really drives home an ending to where it's like the ending is the best part of the movie, I think that would be very interesting. Because I think this with this and Barbarian, like the endings are definitely not the best part for me. I feel
Hmm.
similar in that
yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Well, and I would, I just one thing I would want to say, and I think this, not that any, major Hollywood directors are listening to this, but maybe they will. I don't know if I've ever met someone who doesn't like a movie where we follow in a lot of ways in the way Josh Brolin's character, you know, gets all the Ring doorbells aligned and finds where they all meet in the middle. We get that with the storylines of several different characters where we go back to their origin and we kind of all trail up to the same point where all their storylines can collide. And I just think that for me, that is just one of the most exciting things about a movie when I'm following Julia Garner's character for 30
Hmm.
minutes and then go back in time, and now I'm Josh Brolin's character up to when those two interact, and and just so on with the drug addict and the cop, and it's you know, to me that is just one of the best storytelling devices,
Hmm.
or at least one that works for me so much, and which is why I thought it was probably the best most fun I had in the movie for at least the first three quarters. this year, and just really wanted the plane to land,
Mm.
and for me, it never did. But I'll definitely rewatch it. I can't agree with you guys any more than I do about wanting to show other people this movie. And and it's kind of refreshing because not horror is not everyone's bag. I get that it is for me, but this one's not really horror, and so I don't feel
Mm.
bad showing people that say they don't like horror this movie. And I definitely look
Mm.
forward to doing that real soon.
All right. And let's jump to number 4. Keel, what do you have? Or this is all of ours.
Yeah, our number four movie of the year is The Phoenician Scheme, Wes Anderson's Phoenician Scheme, which is a movie that I just think has kind of like fallen through the cracks a little bit in terms of like what, you know, being talked about. Kind of like I think it's already kind of being forgotten as a movie from this year. I mean, it came out like late spring or something like that. I don't really remember exactly when it came out, but it's been a minute. But pretty much this movie, I mean, explaining a Wes Anderson movie is kind of like a little bit of a moot point in terms of plot. But we follow, this ruthless business CEO or industrialist Zaza, played by the great Benicio del Toro. Which we follow him when he survives yet another assassination attempt. And he's kind of like has this moment of forced reckoning. He has his estranged daughter who's a nun. Interesting double maybe with one battle, have some little nun stuff going on. Points his daughter, estranged daughter, as his heir, as he kind of is like, kind of grappling with his life. And it's really just like another classic later kind of Wes Anderson, like globe-trotting caper with this morally bankrupt tycoon, but also he has a spiritually inclined daughter, and they pull it out of each other. And it's just like I just found it like dazzling in a lot of ways, honestly. I think in a one way you could describe it as like the Grand Budapest Hotel meets Succession, if the Roy family like just roar like color coordinated pastels and spoken deadpan. And I just think like seeing Wes Anderson in this zone and in this world was really interesting. I think the world building was really believable. It made sense like for Wes Anderson to have made this world. I think I am, admittedly not the hugest fan of like the shoebox diorama creations that he has, like toward his late ones. I never had a bad time, and I like a lot of those, but it's not like my favorite thing in the world. But this one just kind of scratched every itch. It made sense for him. I mean, from like, I still think about the bathtub sequence with him, shot from the top, and like Wes Anderson's kind of like picture perfect, meticulous style, like really fits kind of this world for me. And it didn't come at the expense of the heart of the story. And I think like it's one of the best closing scenes of the year. I think there was a really believable uh heartbeat and relationship in the middle between, this tycoon and his daughter who's estranged from him. And it was really funny. I mean, we talked about Michael Cera, but it's just like I wrote down in my notes, Michael Cera exclamation point. Because it's just like he's just great. And it's just a really fun time. But I think, you know, sometimes Wes Anderson movies for me personally can kind of be like those were kind of it was a great meal, and like I'm glad he worked to make it a perfect meal, but like I don't necessarily need to eat it again and again. But this one I've kind of found like has lingered more, and I found myself much more engaged, and I just kind of walked out being like, man, that was like really incredible, and I'm glad that it's this high on this list. I was curious if we were gonna have a consensus, like if this is gonna be on y'all's lists or what, because I don't know how people felt about it. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it, but I'm glad we all have some passion for it because it's just such a great time.
Yeah, this one is number 4 on my list. Also got the Blu-ray this week. Amazon was doing the 3 for 33 4K deal. So,
Nice.
man, I loved this film. I think one of the most exciting parts about it for me were the sequences where I guess Benicio went to heaven. I'm still trying to figure
Yeah.
those sequences out. I think that's heaven. I'm not sure why heaven is black and white, but I appreciated it. My review in the initial when I watched it was just I was so struck by how empathetic Wes was for Benicio's character, and watching him change throughout the film, both personally and in relationship with his daughter, I thought was wonderful. And then, of course, I mean, the basketball sequence in the tunnel is one of
Man,
my favorite sequences of the year. I should have mentioned that at the
man,
break, but
yeah.
goodness sake, that was one of the funniest things I've seen in a long time. Just could not recommend this movie high enough.
Yeah, for me, Michael Cera is really the bright spot of this movie. I had a similar reaction to seeing him in a Wes Anderson movie to seeing him also enter the Twin Peaks universe in the return season. It's just Sarah working with Anderson or Sarah working with David Lynch. That to me just speaks to a deep part of my soul, which is a love for Sarah and irreverent teen comedies and playing that kind of awkward guy to going and being filmed by two of the most awkward filmmakers we've ever seen. Yeah, Phoenician Scheme was not a highlight for me this year. Although it has not caused me to doubt Wes Anderson. I still love all of his films, and one thing I love about Wes Anderson is it feels like every single person comes to a ranking of his movies and could pick a different one for a different reason. And I love his form, but I also feel like he may be too married to it in a lot of ways, and that's just my preference because of how much I like his early films like Bottle Rocket and Rushmore and
That's how I
Tenenbaums,
feel a
which
lot of times is like,
yeah.
man, step away from the process. Let's,
But you know what? This is maybe a charge for Wes Anderson because I thought the shorts he did on Netflix a year or two ago were great. There are a lot of things that just adaptations he could do that just feel like they make sense in a Wes Anderson through a Wes Anderson lens. And so, that's kind of a fun thought project to think of what would be fun for him to adapt into his form. But,
Hmm.
it's still a very fun watch with very memorable scenes. I mean, Cranston and Hanks playing basketball in a tunnel. I mean, you really can't ask for much more.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I'll definitely revisit this one eventually. But
Yeah. I mean,
all right.
to me, Benicio is like the performer of the year. I know like he
mhm.
Mhm.
may not be the best lead and may not be the best supporting, although I could make the case for both. But like across all between Phoenician Scheme and One Battle, it's just like I just think he wins the year. Like and they're so different, both of those, and I just think he puts this movie on his shoulders and like he really supports it.
All right, fellas, we're going to jump to number 3 now. We're getting close, guys. What's number 3? Who we got? Keel. What do you got?
Yeah. So this is my number one or 1A or 1B of the year of Marty Supreme. So I mean, this is just like this came in as just a late buzzer beater for me. I mean, obviously was extremely excited for it and was anticipating it all year, but kind of when One Battle came through and just came in, like the Kool-Aid Man through our movie year and just kind of like blew everything out of the water. I think I kind of like forgot about being excited for Marty Supreme. Uh, and it got, was kind of coming out, good reviews, saw it a little bit. I saw both of those a little bit later, a couple days after the release. And so kind of had some understanding like, okay, they are good. Like they're not flops. And just, man, this movie just really blew me away. And like I saw it again this week, try to make time for it. And just like, I think it was very validating seeing it again. And I think the plot is the least exciting part to talk about. We certainly can. I mean, it's just full of insane things that happen. But pretty much, I think what this movie's about is a man who wants to be important and wants to be valued, and just hijinks ensue because of that. I mean, he's Marty Mauser, main character, played by Timothy Chalamet, which is I just think in a death match with Leo for the best actor award, and just in my minds. He's already at the top of the table tennis world, but table tennis isn't necessarily a huge thing in the world. So he wants to kind of like ascend to the top of the world proper, and get kind of the respect, importance. And it's just like this race of exhilaration, of adrenaline, that, the movie and its exhilaration, I think, matches the sentiment of Marty as a character, just like going and can't stop and can't stop. This movie just flies. And, Chalamet just won Best Actor at the SAG Awards. In his acceptance speech, I think he said it well, where he said, Josh, talking to Josh Safdie, the director, he said, "You made a film about a flawed man with a relatable dream." And I just
Mhm.
think like that's just, you know, honestly, I think the best movies are mirrors in a way, that they are the most effective when they reflect parts of you that you aspire to or parts of you that you don't want to see. And I think this one is probably more of the latter, that maybe we're, at least myself, we're probably a little bit more like Marty than we'd like to be, of kind of chasing this importance and the success kind of at the expense of anybody else. And I just think it's it's just really impressive what they did. The score, I mean, is just like that's the score of the year for me. Like Daniel Lopatin's score is just like I listened to it. I honestly didn't notice it as much on the first watch, just like you are so overwhelmed, and then kind of went back and the second time it just, I mean, blows me away. It's like so hypnotic, so propulsive, and it's a weird mix of I leave the movie being judgmental of the protagonist, mad at the protagonist, but also sympathetic because I see myself in the protagonist. And I also, similar to like, I'll give F1 a little shout, like leaving F1 and leaving this movie, where I'm just like, when I leave it and I say, man, I want to be great, I'm just like, maybe I didn't take away the best message of that movie. When I'm like, I want to be like that guy, you know, but I think it mirrors and shows, it's just very relatable to me. I know, be curious to hear y'all's thoughts, the conversation of like, is Marty a good protagonist and stuff? Like, I'm just not super interested in that conversation. I mean, you look at the rest of our list and it's like, there's not a lot of great people in here. You know, like Eddington and you know, most of our movies, Begonia, like not a lot of great people, you know, like that weapons, it's all these things like that's least interesting to me. But I do understand like if Marty doesn't hook you, then you're just not gonna be along for the ride. But it hooked me from the jump, and I
Mhm.
just yeah, I just walked away really in love with this thing. I think it's you know it's the After Hours successor that I think Caught Stealing wanted to be. Also, movie came out, Aronofsky's Caught Stealing, just like kind of has that energy of After Hours, energy of Goodfellas that like hook you in, make you believe it, and then kind of rip the rug out from under you. Not going to spoil again the ending scene, but it really worked for me. I know it didn't for some, but it was believable. Um, and I just kind of hook, line, and sinker to this one. Like it just kind of had me and it hasn't let go.
Yeah, I'd love to. There's a few things about this movie that I love. This is actually the only movie on this list that I have rewatched this year. I just saw it again with friends the other night, and it was such a blast. I mean, Timothy Chalamet. I'm kind of with Keel. I'd be happy with him or Leo winning it. I do kind of think it's Timothy Chalamet's time to win Best Actor at the Oscars this year because it's just a great performance and really a performance made for him. And I feel like really it's only something he could do. I also just loved. I would encourage you guys to look into this if you haven't yet. The way Josh Shafty and the casting director found people for this movie. There are
Hmm.
a lot of people in this movie that are absolutely outstanding that were literally found off the street or off the internet. Dion is really the highlight of this list. Kind of
Which one's Dion?
Marty's business partner in crime, kind of helps
Yeah,
Okay.
do the orange ping pong ball.
Mhm.
Okay.
Steals a lot of thunder in the first 30
he
minutes
got
of this
he
movie.
got like casted from a New York like getting interviewed on the street after like a New York Knicks game, and like Josh saw that and was like, I want that guy in this movie.
Yeah, he's
Just
like a
like
plumber in upstate New York.
yeah,
Like that's his like day job, and he just absolutely steals the show and most of the scenes he's in. But yeah, I mean,
Kevin
I don't.
O'Leary and
Oh
Tyler
yeah.
Yeah,
Creer. I mean, it's just that it's such like inspired casting,
yeah.
honestly.
Did
Yeah, it
did you
is.
guys pick up Ted Williams? Do you know who Ted Williams is? He a few years ago he was a homeless guy who would use his radio voice to earn money, and he shows up in this film.
Wow.
He's
Okay.
Yeah,
he's like the
he
guy behind the wall
exactly
of the
right.
ping
Yeah.
Oh
pong. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So to your point, there's a lot of that. Now, this was either 2 or 3 on my list. It's funny I can't remember now, but I absolutely love this film. But the criticism I've heard about this film, tell me if you guys agree. Have you seen Good Time and Uncut Gems? And so the criticism I've heard is that it's just that again. What do you guys think of that criticism?
Uh, I
Because
mean,
I think it's the most accessible because you have Timothy Chalamet, and I think it's the most redeeming. Even though I think we all agree the protagonist is awful, I think there's redemption in it. But tell me what you're gonna say.
I'm like kind of I would agree with you. Like I don't think it's the same thing, but also like if it is, like so what is kind of also how I feel. Like I don't know. Those are two great things. I mean, yeah, Sam and I were talking about it, and I think like each movie has been increasingly a little bit better of a sit. You know, like Good Time is
Mhm.
just not a really rough sit. with an amazing movie. I mean, like gut-wrenching ending.
Right.
And then Uncut Gems is like a little bit more poppy, but way more anxiety riddled and like does not pull its punches, especially toward the end. And then this one is like, I don't think it pulls its punches, but I think it's a little bit like, I don't have a kid, but I would imagine like it has changed the way Josh Safdie probably looks at the world. And he's talked about that too in interviews of like he now has a kid. So it's like he's going to be a little bit, and I mean, that's very evident. And, you know, the opening sequence of the movie
Which
and the
is
closing
so
sequence.
fun.
Yeah. Yeah,
Amazing.
this movie takes place over the course of 9 months exactly. Um, and just yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think he yeah, I'm willing to kind of wrestle with the character. Like I just think it's like not I understand if it doesn't convince you, it doesn't convince you. There's nothing you can do about that
Yeah.
as a movie. But like it's just like I'm willing to just kind of like think about it and wrestle with him and you know just not dismiss him as just like this guy, this guy sucks and like I'm out, but just kind of feel like I think there's more there. And I think, he has more things interesting to say about him, to show about him. I'm not really convinced at the ending. Like at first I kind of was like, that is not redeeming. He's just going to go back to being himself. But then the second time I'm like, I don't know, maybe he is changed. And
Yeah.
I just think like there's a lot to think about there. And I like the amount and balance of how much he was willing to show us versus how much he's willing to like leave us to think about.
Yeah, I think it's probably the performance of Timmy's career so far. And honestly, I think my hot take is I like much, much, much prefer Marty Supreme to Uncut Gems. I think it's much more effective. I think it's a much better sit. I find somehow myself feeling more empathy for Marty Mauser than I did for
Oh, me too.
Sandler's
Me too.
character in
Yep.
Uncut
Yeah.
Gems. I actually rewatched Uncut Gems this past week with my wife just to kind of evaluate because I'd only seen Uncut Gems about 2 times before. And after watching Uncut Gems, I was like, man, I think Marty Supreme is. I much, much prefer it, which I was surprised to have happen. And I think my double feature pick for this one is I think Keel mentioned After Hours. I think that would be a really fun one. Mine would be The King of Comedy, also an 80s Scorsese pick, just a man obsessed with greatness and pretty much
Mhm.
going to whatever length to achieve it. And I think both of them are equally not fun sits and fun sits at the same
And fun
time.
sits. Yeah.
And just two incredible leads with Timmy and then De Niro as Rupert Pupkin,
I
which
think
is
do sorry, to cut you off if you're
no,
still
you go
going.
ahead.
I think in the double feature, Paul Schrader on his Letterbox review, which is hilarious, and it's said he said this would be a good double feature with The Mastermind, which I don't know if we'll talk
Mm,
about
Yeah.
today, which is my like number 5 movie of the
Right.
year. Just like
I
Kelly
actually
Reichardt's
saw that
movie.
review too. I thought that was clever.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
fun.
And I was just like, man, that just so clever of like these two guys which actually is a really good double because they feel different, but they invoke kind of the
I mean,
same thing of
totally
like,
different
Yep.
tones,
Yep.
yeah,
but
a
the
lot
same
more quiet and
sense.
restrained, and it's much more like, but it's about these guys who just can't, like, they're impulsive and Marty has this line in the movie where he says, everything in my life is falling apart, but I'll figure it out. And it just kind of keeps
Mm.
going. And it's like, that's kind of, how I feel probably most days in my heart of hearts. And like, I think that in the
Mm.
mastermind too, it's like this guy has this thing and it's going to work out and then everything falls apart, but he's like, I got to figure it out. And you just dig that hole deeper and deeper. I just think, yeah, there's a lot of movies with, it's probably no coincidence that it's just like four dudes up here relating with people like Marty
Yeah.
Mauser
That's
and
a great point
Rupert
too.
Pumpkin.
Yeah.
But so, but man, yeah, just I
So,
love those shouts, Sam, and
so
just
we
this
already
movie.
mentioned the honey scene, but does this movie have the greatest bathtub scene in film history?
Mm,
Has to.
mm,
And with Abel Ferrara, I mean, unbelievable,
yeah,
man.
yeah. Oh, or yeah, putting this bathtub scene with the Phoenician scheme bathtub
That's
scene. It's
Yeah.
just like there's some good bathtubs this year.
Yeah.
That's the moment where the movie's like, okay, like next
Yeah, it
level.
dials it
Like
up.
we're going to like I don't know what this is gonna be, and that happens, and you're just like, oh, okay, like
Yeah.
now we're going.
Sam, did we do your movies for Phoenician Scheme? Did we do your double feature for that?
Oh no, I don't think we did. And I actually don't know if I did for weapons
All
either.
right, tell
My
us
weapons
Phoenician. Go ahead, weapons.
my weapons pick would be I mean, obviously, I think doing Barbarian would be fun just to see Kreger's double. But I think a really interesting one would be The Brood by David Cronenberg. Another very interesting
Yeah.
child actor horror situation. I think that would be fun. And then the Phoenician Scheme, I chose one battle after another just to watch.
Love it.
Yeah,
Benicio back to
Benicio
back.
turn
Yeah.
into Sensei. I think that would be a really funny,
That's
like
great.
5 hours.
Yeah. There's some
But
there's some I think the one for Phoenician Scheme I forgot to mention was be interesting to sit down with Michael Clayton with it because there's
oh yeah,
some like environmental like uh you know corporate thing in there. Oh man, like I think all
yeah,
those are just so I think it's fun this year like we see like how many fun doubles there are. It shows
yeah.
that like there's a lot of these movies are kind of like poking at different parts of other movies that we love.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I think one thing I wanted to point out, especially about Josh Safdie, who's I think yeah, Good Time is still a blind spot for me, so I won't speak on that one. But Uncut Gems, I think Marty Supreme is actually a pretty decent litmus test for whether you would or wouldn't like Uncut Gems. And in a lot of ways, I see Safdie kind of coming onto the scene, um, kind of putting a new spin on really, Scorsese's bread and butter, which is giving us a main character who kind of makes us feel icky. We can't really help but root for in some ways. But then, he kind of pulls the rug out from under you. And it's like, if you're rooting for this guy, maybe you have some more to consider.
Yeah.
And I think Marty Supreme is one of the more hopeful options. I think I agree with Keel's second reading of the film. I think I kind of left my second watch thinking, being a little bit more hopeful for Marty Mauser's future. But yeah, I think you could pair a lot of Scorsese films with this one as a
Hmm.
double feature,
Hmm.
and really have a lot of introspection to do at the end of it, especially if you're honest about how you watched it.
Yeah, I think a more fun double could also be The Color of Money,
Yeah.
the
Oh
pool
yeah.
movie with
Hmm.
Scorsese as well. That would be a little bit more fun than The King of Comedy, but another sports movie with a
I
obsessed
think you're right.
man.
Yeah. All right, we're getting close, fellas. All right, we're going to number two. Cameron, what do we have at number two?
Yeah, and this is our number two, and it's difficult because I think it came in with the same amount of points as our number one ultimately. But I think based off of how we had it ranked in our list, we decided to put it at number two. But our number two is Sinners, directed by Ryan Coogler, and yeah, this is what I had to say about Sinners. I said Sinners was one of the few bright spots at the beginning of this movie year. It's a provocative title. We got a dual role played by Michael B. Jordan, one that worked in a lot of ways that Robert Pattinson's Mickey 17 did not. And it's a plot described as a vampire horror, something, what we've seen before, but, not, it doesn't really feel like people gravitate towards a whole lot. Um, I knew I was going to be in for something unique when I sat down to watch Sinners in April when it came out. This film follows two twin brothers, Smoke and Stack, both played by Jordan, who returned to their Mississippi Delta roots from the big city up north to start a juke joint. Yet the trouble they would face here would wear a different face, a familiar foe embracing the term of unwelcomed visitors, trying to relate as victims of the early 20th century American Southeast. Sinners is original and inventive, weaving together multiple genres in a story that feels 100 years old, but is as relevant as ever. I've already touched on this, but it fits the thread of 2025 with a stacked cast, including Jack O'Connell, Haley Steinfeld, Delroy Lindo, and then two newcomers that I think we need to keep our eyes on, which is Jamie Lawson, and Miles Caton.
Hmm.
I'm sure he's deserving of many awards this year, and I know it's already won quite a few. But if it could receive one, if I could give it one right now, I'd have to give it the best original song for "I Lied to You," which is
Mm.
performed by Caton kind of about halfway through the film. And it really kind of feels like the heart and soul of Sinners in a lot of ways, even though it kind of segregates from the actual horror part of the genre. Um, but that was definitely one of the most memorable and moving scenes that I remember watching this year in the theaters. Uh, to kind of cap off my summary of Sinners, I said, in a world where well done original stories are about as rare as real vampires, Sinners is a must see film, well deserving of the wide support they've received at the box office this year. I think it's almost ironic how how much we needed an original story like that, and really kind of paved the way for, I think, what we saw were quite a few kind of original ideas, either happening or coming soon, even in 2026. So I really loved Sinners. It was my number one for most of the year, and the movie we're about to talk about after this is my number one. So I can't recommend it enough.
Yeah, this is one where it just makes me wonder, why isn't Ryan Coogler, like, when we people always talk about the best directors going now, why he's never mentioned, or at least I never hear him mentioned, because he is such a great director.
I always hear him described kind of in the best of his generation, kind of
He's
in
young, yeah.
the Greta Gerwig, the Jordan Peele. He's in that conversation. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think it's a tragedy that he's not. I mean, he is delivering time and time and time again. I think he probably gets put into a bucket because he's then brought into kind of the Marvel universe with, Black Panther. But I think his own creative endeavors are pretty
Yeah.
incredible across the board. And even, the Creed cinematic universe turned out to be pretty incredible as well, even though it's more of an IP situation. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's kind of the
Hmm.
question.
If there's one movie that I think competes with best cinematography with like Train Dreams, I think this is the one we discuss. This film is breathtaking to look at.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think the top three on our list for sure are like, but especially this one is just like immediately like iconic, like immediately iconographic. And I think that's probably true with all of Coogler's movies, like we Black Panther, the Creed movies, like he has this like way to make things iconic, just and visualize things. And I think similar to the three, Marty Scream we just talked about this one, and then our number one movie of the year, like all of these are just kind of immediately like ascended into like these things are going to last. They immediately got into, you know, the mainstream. They immediately were. This one was immediately like memed, which is always a sign of like, okay, it's like it's in the culture, if there's memes coming out. And this movie is so awesome. It was like definitely one of probably my favorite like movie going experience of the year, like in the theater. Just like not knowing where it was going to go, not knowing how it was going to get there. Having my fair share of hesitations, just like, the same actor playing twins. It's like, this weird thing I don't know about, it's just like, don't know how it's going to work. And it just landed all of its punches, in my opinion.
And I think you mentioned it, the scene where he's singing and the cultural and time is passing. What's the title of the song? What is the title of the song?
I lied to you.
If anybody said that's the scene of the year, I don't think anybody would vehemently argue against it. I mean, that's a pretty amazing sequence.
Yeah, and I think we see with Sinners and really on the paired with Black Panther, um, Coogler just, I feel like he's got a decent grip on like world building in some ways, and also kind of how you know pure fantasy as like its own genre. Kind of, we haven't really. I'm not a huge fan of the Avatar movies, obviously, which is kind of the current fantasy series that is hitting theaters. But outside of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, like kind of ending in the early 2000s, we haven't really seen a whole lot of great pure fantasy. And I feel like Kugler's, he's like, well, let's not just leave it at pure fantasy. Let's kind of weave multiple genres together. I mean, I don't know how you're getting a movie that is both a commentary on historical blemishes of America, and is about vampires, and is scary but has great music, great original music, that are not songs that you listen to while you sit down and journal at your desk, but are songs you sing in the car, like with your friend. Like it has so much from so many different areas all
Hmm.
kind of coming together. Um, and yeah, I'll definitely be excited for whatever's next, and whether it's an adaptation or an original story, I just feel like it's in good hands with Ryan Coogler. And yeah, I'm sad this is a number one, but completely understand why it's not.
And what was the name of the big guy who was watching the door? He had a great name. Was it like Biscuit
Cornbread.
or Cornbread?
Cornbread,
Cornbread,
that's
Like,
yes.
right. Yeah,
Cornbread, great name there. All right, well,
not the best bouncer, but
no, no, he makes
Great name, though.
mistakes.
Not the
All
best
right,
bouncer.
fellas, well, we're finally here. Yeah, I think some people are going to be kind of understand where we're going here. So finally, we're at number one. Sam, tell us what we got at number one.
So before I say it, I'll just say thank you to Cameron for letting me talk about this. I was originally set to talk about Sinners, but I got on my hands and knees and begged Cameron to let me talk about this
And
movie.
before we get to it, what are your two films to watch along with Sinners?
Man, this was the one I struggled with the most. But I think the two that came to my mind quickly were Us by Jordan Peele. I think would be a really interesting one because it kind of has the twin dual kind of actor situation going on. I think that would be fun. And then the other one was Bram Stoker's Dracula by Coppola, just to get another crazy
That's
vampire
interesting.
story going on. And I was, I looked into some interviews with Coogler, and he said that a lot of Coen brothers films were inspiring for this one, like Inside Llewyn Davis and Fargo. I actually haven't seen Llewyn Davis yet, but those could be interesting as well. But number one is I mean by far the number one of the year for me. Above Sinners is One Battle After Another by Paul Thomas Anderson. This movie for me just absolutely blew my mind. Granted, Paul Thomas Anderson is probably my favorite filmmaker, or at least living filmmaker. It's described as a black comedy action thriller, which I think is probably on the nose in a lot of ways, very satirical. It's loosely inspired by the 1990 novel Vineland by Thomas Pynchon. Stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Sean Penn, Benicio del Toro, Regina Hall, Tiana Taylor, and Chase Infinity. Basically, the movie opens with Tiana Taylor and Leo kind of engaging in this crazy releasing of at this, what was it? It was like right on the border of
Like a
Mexico and
retention
America.
center.
Yeah,
Yeah.
retention center, and they're going in and releasing, and then Leo sets off all these fireworks, and it's this just insanely propulsive, like, Johnny Greenwood's score is blaring in your face in this. And then it follows Leo and Tiana Taylor in this kind of romantic relationship where they're together, and also Sean Penn's character, Colonel Stephen A. Lockjaw, is introduced at this point as well, who might be one of my favorite characters of the year. It follows these three in kind of this wandering story until finally, and not to spoil too much, but Tiana Taylor essentially gets placed in witness protection. There's also a moment where we discover that she's pregnant, and throughout the movie, we're not 100% sure who the father is, but we're led to believe that Leo is the father. And then you find out later in the movie whether or not he is, which I'll leave to the audience to go figure out. And then the middle third of the movie is actually the part of the movie that I rewatched the most. It's the kind of chase sequence between Leo and Benicio, who is Sensei, where Sensei is trying to help Leo find his daughter. It's obviously the hilarious moments where Leo is on the phone trying to get through to what is his name? Conrad Josh, who Leo thinks is a dumb name for revolutionary. But it follows this group, the French 75, which is kind of this big revolutionary left-wing group. The whole movie and the middle third kind of goes about 15 years later, where Leo is kind of this drugged out stoner guy as he's trying to find his daughter, who's again played by Chase Infinity. And man, I just find this movie so enthralling, so fast, so funny. I mean, the moments with Leo and Benicio are out of control. Where Leo is, in Benicio's, I don't even really know what you could, karate studio, and he's diving across the floor, and he's like, Benicio, I need a gun, and he's like, I'll get you a gun, man. He's like, all you have is nunchucks. I find it so hilarious. But man, just could not recommend this movie higher. Ending this movie into that the road sequence is one of the most exciting moments of the year for me. One of the most creative things I think PTA has done in quite a long time. But Yeah, I could speak on this movie forever. I've seen it 5 times already. I have rewatched the middle hour probably half a dozen to a dozen times. I've seen it 3 times in theaters. Just could not speak high enough about this movie. I hope it gets PTA his first Best Picture. But one battle after another, just an all-time favorite of mine.
And it's funny, once car chase scene that happens in the third act got online, when I saw it in the theater, I was like, this is like a 20-minute sequence. And it's like a 4.5-minute sequence, but man, it is in the theater. That's one of those, like, if you're like, why should I see it in the theater? That scene is why you see it in the theater.
Yeah, I think that's, we talked about cinematography for a few things earlier, but scene of the year, I mean, there's just nothing more exciting, intense, and just really new the way that scene is filmed, that car chase scene. And really just kind of culminates a middle, probably like hour and a half. It may not be that long, but it felt like that of, you know, DiCaprio and Del Toro, kind of being the leads and this kind of moment of trying to hide and rescue people, and then their mission changes, and there's just Del Toro's stoicism and just dry comedy in those moments is just great. And DiCaprio is you know DiCaprio is obviously a great actor who's played in so many great roles, but for this one, is to me this is the most similar he has been to Rick Dalton from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which was my favorite DiCaprio role before seeing this, and it just feels like an extension of that, and him doing kind of an intense, angry, aging out of the system type guy, and I just think he just does that. He does it so well. It's so compelling, and it culminates with probably just the most exciting thing I've seen on camera since Oppenheimer. And they dropped the A bomb. But honestly, for me, probably my one of my favorite movies of all time, the docking scene in Interstellar. This is probably the most exciting I've felt since seeing that in a theater. And for people who know me and know the movies I like, and aren't Nolan deniers like Keel, they'll know that's a lofty speech from me. So I'll just leave it there. I don't really have many bad things to say about this movie. I could if you need me to, but I'd prefer not to.
I'll jump in there for that because I want to be a little bit of a dissenting opinion here, because I have it at my top 5 of the year. So it's not like I dislike this film, but I do want to make the conversation a little bit more interesting. Just talk about the fact that, I mean, when this came out, people were saying it's the greatest movie of all time, or the greatest movie of the 2000 since 2000 and such. And I do think that was a little bit intense. I specifically thought the first 40 minutes before Leo became a key character felt a little overdrawn and such. And then I also think that, we talked about there's a lot of people you don't like, and a lot of our protagonists are not likable this year. However, I felt like this one was not aware that the protagonists were the bad guys. What do you guys think of my being a squeaky wheel in this one?
Yeah, I mean, I love this movie too. This will probably be one like down the road that's like whichever one I watched the most recently is my favorite of the year. And they're between this and Marty, and I love them for different reasons. I think kind of to your point, like the only thing like maybe, I mean, this is probably still like, kind of gonna get canonized for me is like, 5-star classic, like PTA at doing what he does best. But I think like what's holding me back just like a hair in comparison to some of like some of my favorite movies ever of the other ones that he's made, of like The Master and Phantom Thread and There Will Be Blood, like that are up there all time for me, is like it feels a hair less like mystical and mysterious than some of his other movies, which I don't think is a bad thing or a detractor, but I think it is interesting to your point of like, how do we feel about these characters or what happens in the movie? Because it feels a little bit like PTA rather than kind of like hiding this mysterious secret inside the movie and these relationships. He's kind of presenting it, and it's a little bit more black and white in terms of like who we're supposed to be rooting for and who we're not supposed to be rooting for. Whereas, you know, with There'll Be Blood, you're just like, I'm rooting for this guy, but I know I'm not supposed to. It's a similar kind of thing of like this mirror of like, I see myself in him, but it's all the bad parts of me. This one is like, I think we are supposed to probably be a little bit more willing to be on board, kind of with the French 75 and the revolution. But it is like, I think it's more complex than it might present itself to be. I think it might know that too, though. But I just think that that might be something that rubs people a hair is like there's not a lot of mystery like presented on the text of the movie. And so if you like that might rub some people the wrong way if you don't feel like you're left to kind of make your own like opinions or convictions like
I think that's
yourself
really
based
smart,
on
Keel. I think one of the things that feels different for me is like Daniel Plainview in There Will Be Blood feels like a myth. Like he feels like a mythological figure. Like he's not quite accessible. He doesn't really feel like a real person. He's like so outlandish. I think Leo is so on the ground. And at the end of the day, like he's not a very good revolutionary, which I think is so funny. Like
Mhm.
he can't get to his daughter because he forgot one password. And he's not a good dude. He abuses drugs and alcohol. He's self-aware of that. He's like, I am a drug and alcohol lover, man. And he's like, that's why my brain is hazy. I think like comparing There Will Be Blood to this, There Will Be Blood is very self-aware of what it's doing, and I think also, One Battle is in the same sense, and I think it's such an empathetic viewing because of the father-daughter relationship. I think that's the thing that nails it on the head for me, and I think too with the antagonist of Stephen A. Lockjaw, he is such a villain that I think it becomes easier to have compassion on Leo's character because it's so obvious who we're rooting against. I mean, he is truly like Satan in the flesh in this movie, and I think PTA did such a good job writing him. And so I think having those two leads head to head makes it easier for me to root for Leo, and because of the Chase Infinity character, who is just played beautifully
oh yeah.
as the daughter. I don't know. I think that's kind of what I would say to
Yeah.
that. Just
I think
Leo.
Yeah.
she's kind of the protagonist. Like if you really
Yeah,
look at it, like
that's right.
when you watch it knowing where it goes, like she's the heartbeat of the movie
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, David, I said I wouldn't say any bad things about this movie, but you're kind of causing me to dive into my one item on my cons list here. And to me, it just the one blemish on this movie is I think it's with most black comedies, it's a satire, and I just don't know if it passes the satire test because I think what makes satire such a compelling storytelling device or storytelling genre is that it kind of it kind of caters to opposing views equally. And I think you could categorize definitely Colonel Lockjaw and the Christmas Adventurers Club as satirical. When they're on the screen, you can't help but think, we're
They're
dealing with a
funny,
bunch of
man.
idiots here.
Oh,
They're
so
Yeah,
funny,
funny.
but
yeah.
and when we get to the French 75, other than DiCaprio for the most part and Del Toro, they're just taken very seriously, which I think is, and you know what, that may have been the intent behind it, and I can understand that. But I think that's when that's where I think it falls kind of flat is that it doesn't really pass the satire test for me. Although, what if you go to my letterbox, you'll see that I wrote more about this movie than probably any other movie this year on that. But Colonel Lockjaw, I mean, we just talked about him, and I think Sam did a good job of describing him. But I think what's interesting about his character is, and what we learn about his character is this: he is a guy looking for acceptance from something bigger. And obviously that's the Christmas Adventurers Club. And he's really just a pawn in their game too.
Yep.
And I think that really speaks. I really think if anything, it kind of speaks to a lot of, what makes us, at a higher level, a decent social and political commentary is, is that there are, people pulling strings, and that are obviously and have a lot more power and control than anyone, and it's really easy to really just be a pawn and disposable, for the sake of someone else, and it feels more kind of like a transactional thing where, you know, one person's giving a lot and someone else isn't really giving as much. So I think, in some ways you do get a little sympathy for Lockjaw near the end of the film, and how the Christmas Adventures Club kind of deals with him. But regardless of whether it passes the satire test, there is so much about this movie that is just so exciting. It makes you laugh, out loud. It's
It is.
PTA.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's our number one movie of the year. So I don't want to talk too much, but I do want to just have that dissenting opinion. But yeah, it's funny. Leo's hilarious. There's an interrogator in this film that is horrifying. There's a skateboarding sequence that is, if it probably isn't as good as the car chase scene, but is almost as good. I mean, this is a really well put together film. Whether you agree with the politics or the characters, you can't deny that this is an excellently
Yeah.
put
So I think
together.
that's its genius, is that like it has enough in there to like cause discussion, like almost at the risk of us like debating a movie that is like so clearly
Right.
amazing. And we put it number one is like it, unlike some other movies that you kind of just watch and forget about, is like this thing just sticks in your head. It makes you think. I think that all the characters are so fully realized, like it makes you think about them in a way that you might not think about a, tertiary or peripheral character in another movie. Like, but these people come in, like you're saying, the interrogators, like he comes in, one all like first of all, he's like, I don't even know if that guy's an actor. I don't think he has like any other credits. But he comes in and it's like, okay, this is his movie now, like for the minutes that he's in it. And every person who is in a scene, they kind of like take the scene and own the scene. They're so fully realized that it's just like this, it's just kind of a miracle to me that so many of these moving parts and all these ideas do fit together, and just like work and vibrate in the way they do. And that on the surface, it's like a fun time at the movies. And you can also go endlessly deep in thinking about all of these different ways that you kind of want to dip your foot in the water of like what he's doing and what he's trying to say, what he's not trying to say, like who these people are, all that stuff. It's incredible.
Yeah, well, guys, there's our top 10, one battle after another. Number one, we have 3 minutes, so I just want to ask you a couple more questions. Two more questions. The first one is honorable mentions. Just throw out a couple titles we may not have mentioned that you would like to at least mention, that these are worth value, these worth discussing.
Yeah, for the sake of brevity, I'll start. I'm gonna throw out F1. I think it's kind of a consensus thing that Top Gun Maverick was one of the best movies and best movie going experiences we've had, in the 21st century, and definitely since COVID. But you're getting rid of Tom Cruise, you're getting rid of airplanes, and you're adding Brad Pitt, and you're adding Formula One race cars, and it's directed by the
And
same person. I just can't recommend F1 enough.
Mine is going to be Hamnet. I went into this one going, okay, here's an Oscar bait movie. I have to sit through it for voting purposes. And then I was like crying for the last 20 minutes. It's a very powerful film about grief.
I'm excited to see that one.
All right. And then my last question for you guys is, the audience that I cater to is primarily either conservative or faith based. We're all Christian guys. Is there a movie, and it could be from this list or it could be something we didn't mention? Just quickly tell me a movie that you would say, dude, you guys gotta see this movie. What title would you guys throw out there and why?
I would say I want to talk about Roofman. Like I just love
Yeah.
Roofman. Like I watched it, and just like it's just great. And I just think like it's a cool. It'd be interesting, like kind of double with Wake Up Dead Man, to where it's like there's some interesting church stuff in there that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah,
Uh,
you're right.
and just like, I mean, we get Channing Tatum, like easy sell for a lot of people. Just great cast, and it's just like a really good movie with two amazing performances in the middle of it. That also I think has some stuff to offer about like, you know, if you want to talk about and think about the church, like Pastor Ron. I'm just like, let's hang out with Pastor Ron. Let's get to know Pastor Ron. We could use more of them.
Yeah.
So I would throw Roofman out there for sure.
Sam, what do you got?
Yeah, I was just gonna say quickly, I think the most interesting film for Faith is Wake Up Dead Man. I think whether you love it or not, it's the most accessible film probably on this list for wide audiences in a lot of ways. And then the other one I would just quickly recommend, if you're a fan of Jaws, they did a Jaws at 50 documentary this past year that was unbelievably good. So those are my two recs.
Cameron, what do you got?
Yeah, I this is a movie we saw together, David, that
It
you
is.
took me to a North Carolina Critics Association screener for this about 5 weeks before release, which was just a fun experience in general. But I'd recommend Warfare. Obviously, I think it's Alex Garland has his fingerprints all over this one, and we may have mentioned it earlier, but it's got a stacked cast of internet boyfriends. I think was Keel's term for it. And really, the thing about it, and I think the thing about war movies in general is you can't help but feel a sense of unity and mission that we see in warfare, and really just the horrors of war really kind of depict on a much larger scale just kind of how suffering as a thing that everyone goes through is really important to have community and people that maybe you haven't suffered the same thing, but you all share your own suffering and you really gravitate towards one another. And so the sense of brotherhood we see in warfare, the kind of what that aching that we all feel when people are gone too early or we lose someone in our life, and really just the horrors of war, really stirs something in us that says there's got to be something better. There's got to be a better way. And I just think it stirs up, in a lot of ways, what a lot of war movies stir up is just kind of this longing for a better world, a world with, without the horrors of war and the pain and the tears that we see this group of guys go through over the span of really just about 90 to 100 minutes of just sheer intensity. And so I recommend it. It's a really good watch, and will obviously stand the test of time, as we've seen a lot of war movies do.
And it's one of those in this time of day where so many movies are 2.5, 3 hours. This movie's over in the blink of an eye. I mean, this movie's I don't think I breathed watching it in the theater, man. All right, and so my movie that I have you guys seen Sketch? So this is it's a family movie, but it's kind of a horror movie, but it's kind of an amazing, again, a story about a family where a young girl's drawings become real and start attacking the community. And it has all the horror tropes, but like when you kill a monster because it's made of crayon, it like turns into crayon dust. So it's like this gentle horror, but it's got a heart to it. And that's the one for me that, like, if I was going to say everybody go watch this movie that we hadn't mentioned, it's got to be Sketch.
Awesome.
But yeah, so guys, thank you so much for joining me for a top 10. We'll see if we can get together more frequently and do these little panels.
Would love it.
Thanks, David.
Thanks so much, man.